not to appear on a video, just turn it off. Thank you. So I think now, Maddie, you can start the YouTube live stream and just give your thumbs up when that's ready to go.
All good now. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Welcome to our second EconTEAching seminar. And thank you all of you on Zoom and on YouTube for joining this session. Before we start, let me tell you a little bit about the structure of this session for those ones, especially who didn't join the first one. So everybody is mute now, and I will start with asking some questions to our speaker Sam, which I'm going to introduce you in a moment. And after that, I'm going to open these questions from the audience. Remember that people from YouTube can ask questions as well. We have Claudia today, who is moderating the YouTube chat as well. So just ask questions. And same for Zoom. People on Zoom this week, we are introducing the opportunity to ask questions live if you feel like. But please keep it short. It's a question, not like a long comment. So we have the opportunity to kind of get as many questions as possible. So let me just start introducing our speaker today, Sam. Sam, thank you very much for accepting to join us today. And some background about Sam. He graduated in economics at Newcastle University in 2007. And since then, Sam has been working with young people from underrepresented backgrounds under various roles. He has been a teacher, he has been a careers advisor, and Sam even contributed to the foundation of a new school in highly deprived areas of the northeast of England. Sam currently works at the edtech company Global Bridge, which goal is to give young people a level playing field to demonstrate their skills and talent. That sounds awesome. And I think more in general, like Sam has always focused on helping young people. And as he says to describe himself, helping young people to become the best version of themselves. So thank you, Sam. I hope, like, if you want to say something more about yourself, just,
Yeah, no, thanks very much, Steffi, for that kind introduction. And thanks again to the wider team that have set this up. It's great to be part of today's webinar. So thanks to UCL, Warwick, Maddie, who's been great pulling all the strings, pulling this together. But yeah, as Steffi mentioned, I was studying economics, and probably halfway through my degree realized that the set path of maybe working for one of the top 4 auditors, what wasn't for me. Education was for me. So I've had a career working with Premier League football clubs, in a secondary school, and now with an ed tech company, Global Bridge. And like Steffi mentioned, throughout that, main goal has just been helping young people of all backgrounds and all abilities to be the best version of themselves. So when I was invited for today's webinar, I was chuffed because it's right up my street, and really excited to get the discussion going.
Okay, and just as a way of background for everybody, although the majority of people are saying is from the UK, but we know that we have people from all over the world sometimes following us. So just about widening participation in the UK, and what do we mean by widening participation? It's in general like this idea, we would like to increase the proportion of young people from underrepresented backgrounds entering the higher education. And you can see on your screens, there is a series of groups that are considered underrepresented in higher education. And to this, there has been a lot of achievement in last years. We can see that the percentage of 15 years old, that when they were 15 years old, were in a state-funded school with free school meals, went from something like 14% in 2005 to 26% in 2017, sorry, which, you know, is quite a big achievement. However, we have seen that actually the increase is more people accessing higher education. So the gap between those kids with free school meals and kids with no free school meals actually remains more or less the same. And in fact, since 2013, it has increased a little bit. So you can see we have more kids have access to higher education, but we haven't really narrowed up the gap between those from these backgrounds and other kids. And finally, because this workshop is focused on economics, we know, and if all of the economists in the session know, is that economics lacks diversity. And there is a lot of discussion at the moment. I have been involved in a lot of seminars about women in economics. And we know that women in economics are around 30%. But if then we are going to look at Black and minorities in general, it's even less. I couldn't find specific data for the UK, but I found it for the US. And for instance, Black economies are around 8%, the total population. And another thing that we notice is that the gap comes well before higher education. And although we do not require, or a lot of universities do not require A-levels economics to enter university, we don't at Warwick, and I don't think you do at UCL, and it's the same in many universities. However, 70% of economics students do have A-levels in economics. So it's still an important, it tells us a lot about which kids do economics at university. And in fact, we noticed that there is still state schools are very underrepresented in here, right? So Sam, I would like to kind of pick on that. And what do you think are the barriers? Apologies. What do you think are the main barriers for young people from these groups?
So brilliant addition there from your four-legged friend. Yeah, so I think the main barriers that we see for young people accessing careers and higher education, you have to see it to be it. That's probably a phrase that I'll repeat a few times throughout this webinar. You have to see it to be it. Young people need to have the right role models, mentors to guide them along the way. And if they don't see people that have maybe followed these footsteps or currently in these areas, how do they know that they exist? Never mind access them. You know, universities have some unbelievable schemes, schools outreach schemes, widening participation schemes. At my last school in Newcastle, I used to soak them all up. I used to engage in everything. I loved it. I couldn't have enough. You know, we have summer schools. We have universities visiting schools for one-off workshops, open days, absolutely brilliant. A huge problem is, though, I used to engage, so my students benefited. But did every school benefit? Did every school have someone who had the luxury like me, where I could be flexible with my timetable and get my students out on these visits? Did every university talk to all the schools in Newcastle? You know, it's almost nigh on impossible for universities to have contact and reach every school in the country and every young person. I think there's around 4,200 state secondary schools in the UK. It's not going to happen. Schools outreach teams have brilliant staff members, but they have small teams. They're not going to be able to reach every school and every young person. So we really have to think about, how can we make sure it's a level playing field for all young people? So they're not just fortunate that their school's got a proactive staff member, the uni's reached out to that school. You know, actually every young person should be able to access these opportunities. That means, yes, let's continue with the great practice that's face-to-face, but especially in these current lockdown periods, we need to think about how we can use technology. Lots of universities are embracing this at the moment, and I know that was the focus of last week's webinar, but how can we use that technology to raise awareness, open eyes, and raise aspirations of young people? And when I say young people, I'm not just talking about sixth form age, 16, 17, 18-year-olds. We need to think about young people as young as possible. Let's start the journey early. Now, at the moment, we've got the lockdown. So this means that if you're a year 13 student in the UK, you won't be sitting exams. So you won't receive that grade that you would have done in a very traditional manner. You're going to get some form of predicted grade. It's a bit unclear. We're not sure how it's going to work exactly, but teachers are going to have a role in this. We're going to look at past work, but also there is the likelihood that there will be some impact from the school that you are at and the historical grades that that school has achieved. The worrying thing about this is if you are in a school that maybe hasn't performed historically too well at A levels, then there's a greater chance that you won't achieve those high grades compared to a student who has the same ability but happens to go to a high achieving school. Now here, the worry is that students then are getting lower grades. They might not hit the grades that universities want, but also if they're not hitting those top grades, you know, there's often a large group of young people from underrepresented groups that actually surprise themselves on results day and actually get higher grades than they expected. They might not have even considered university before, but on that day they think, wow, I've aced it here. Let's go for clearing. With the help of my tutor from school, I'm going to access clearing. I'm going to look at a foundation degree and see how I can get into uni now. With all this happening with predicted grades and also the fact that they're not at school, they don't have contact with that, you know, strong mentor, they might not have the support at home. I think there's going to be a dramatic tail off in underrepresented groups going for clearing and applying in those latter stages. So there's a lot of work to be done to level that playing field and bridge the gap.
So, and I actually want to pick on that last part you said, because that's one of the questions. What can we do? Because of course, as you said, like these kids are going to be, you know, maybe going to be are not going to have the support that they usually have at school, and therefore might not even try to access university. So, what can we do at this stage?
Yeah, so I think we need to start the communication with these young people. Let's not wait until results day. It's too late. Those young people potentially could be disengaged from education. They might be under pressure to have found work, which is going to be tough in these times. We need to get that communication going. We know we can't do that face-to-face at the moment. So we're going to have to embrace technology. Lots of universities are looking at virtual open days. At Global Bridge, we're doing an event next month called Future Stars, all about young people being able to talk directly to these universities and employers. So we need to make sure young people have access to these. It's all well and good putting these activities together, but we need to get them out to all young people. And remember, you know, IT is brilliant. It's exciting. Not every young person.
Yeah, exactly. But how do kind of, you know, because for schools it's easier, you know, the pupils and you know how to contact them. But for us, it's kind of, we don't know them. And of course, sometimes we don't know them until they actually apply. But you are telling us they might not apply this year. And so how do we reach them? You might not have a solution, but, you know.
I wish I had the perfect answer there, Steffi. But yeah, I think we still have to lean on the schools. The schools are still maintaining contact with the majority of students using things like Google Classroom, even social media, sometimes sharing messages on social media. Schools are really embracing Twitter, Instagram. These are the things that the young people are using. So schools are getting much better and they're being forced to. Some are brilliant at this already, staff members and schools. So, you know, using technology and the schools is one manner, but I think we need to look to those that already have good contact with young people. So thinking, how can we use partners that have strong relationships with young people to really make the most of that? With young people, they've got to trust who's sending the message, who is sharing this information, And trust can be a huge barrier, especially from underrepresented groups. So let's think about, yes, let's use the schools, but let's use other groups that those young people turn to. They might be, national bodies, charities on social mobility that young people trust, and they think if it's coming from them, then actually, yeah, I will sit up and listen.
Okay, so I think that kind of answers Claudia's question on, do we know who kids listen to outside of schools? And do you think kids do listen to these associations and charities that you are talking about?
Yeah, so there's lots of different movements. There's a great movement, National Careers Week, which lots of young people across the UK are familiar with, and they're constantly pumping out information on Twitter, Instagram. Again, young people turn to that. But let's try and be clever. Let's try and get, influential role models, people they can look up to, people that have come from their background. This could be alumni. I think it's a perfect opportunity to embrace the alumni community. So look at people within your university that have come from those schools that can say, when I was your age, this is what I did. I came from your neighborhood. We need these kind of poster boys and poster girls for each university, each department, so young people can actually really associate, and it's quite tangible and real to them.
Okay, and so I think Tim has a question here. Tim, do you want to ask your question? You want me to ask your question? So, okay.
You can ask for me.
Thinking about the achievement gap between good schools and bad schools for otherwise similar talented students, in order to open doors to talented students from poor schools, what more should top universities be doing?
Right. Okay. So top universities need to make these young people feel welcome. A big problem for young people, even if they're successful and they get onto a course, it's making them feel part of this community. There's a danger that when they get there, they feel that maybe they don't deserve to be there, because actually they go to lectures, they walk across the campus. These students seem to know each other already. They seem to have a rapport. They seem to speak with such confidence. I don't belong here. So we need to make them feel comfortable and start that conversation as young as possible. So this could be, having online forums or a level of communication, videos such as this for young people to engage with now, because we don't want them to disengage with education at all at this current climate, which they could well do, because they might have lost contact with their school, might have lost contact with those role models. So the chat needs to start now. We need to pick them up and give them vehicles where they can start to ask questions to university lecturers such as yourselves, start to ask questions to current students, make them feel that they're part of a movement and there's a sense of belonging. There was something brilliant, Steffi, that you mentioned last week for one of your existing students, that you posted a few videos, and actually that student just said, even just watching the videos made me feel like I was still part of a university. They want a sense of belonging because they may already feel that they don't belong, and actually maybe I shouldn't be here. There's doubt in their minds. So yeah.
So does that actually, well, that kind of links to another point that many people are asking, because we're talking a lot about like attracting kids to university from different backgrounds, but especially for top universities, Russell Group universities, there is kind of, when they arrive, they might not feel like they are part of this community, right? And we see, and in some places we can see that there is higher dropouts of these kids. They don't finish university. So what do you think, once we actually manage to attract them, that's not the end of the work, I would say that's actually the beginning, which activities can we put in place, or what do you think, which policies we can adopt to actually keep the students engaged and help to develop that sense of belonging that you are talking about?
Yeah, so I think for me, a huge factor, and this should be for all students, but I think especially relevant to underrepresented groups, is they go to university because they want to have a bright future and a career ahead of them. So something that I think, looking back at my experience of university, because I was first generation of university was great. I learned so much in the lectures, but I didn't learn too much about the what next. For young people from underrepresented groups, university isn't a 3-year fun experience, just, you know, almost like a gap year type experience to learn and become yourself. It is that to a certain extent, but it's a stepping stone to a bright career. They want to know when they start that degree, have I made the right choice? Because I could have applied for a degree apprenticeship, and actually I could be working now, I could be paid a salary and be training on the job, but I've come to university, so how is this going to help my career? So I believe we need to do more in terms of employability skills. I think employability skills will help all students, but really help those from underrepresented groups, make them feel that actually I've made the right decision here, because I am not only learning, but I'm getting a step ahead. This is going to help me find, you know, a dream job. And, you know, when I say employability skills, we need to open young people's eyes. We do economics, and I always thought of, well, if I do this course, I have to work for one of the top 4 auditors. And that was it. Top 4 auditors or education, and do more research on this. That was my little world. And no one opened my eyes, unfortunately, at that stage. And I thought, I don't want to work for one of the top 4. That's not for me. That feels too constrained, traditional. You know, let's talk to these young people and tell them how massive the opportunities are using an economics degree. I did a little Google search earlier this week, and I found some jobs with Mars, so the confectionery company, being a cocoa sustainability analyst. You need an economics degree. I found a job with Samsung, director of global partnerships, needed economics. Kellogg's, e-commerce, Slack, strategic value consultants. You know, let's open their eyes to these jobs that actually are with huge global brands that these young people are aware of, that are a little bit different. It's not traditional auditor, stockbroker. You can do so much more with an economics degree. So I think employability is one key area.
So actually, but that's kind of Claudia's point is making is very important, because you say we need to talk about employability with these students, but something that usually at university we don't want to do is to kind of signal any student in general, these students in particular. So we don't want to kind of say, okay, you, because you are WP students, let's focus on these things. So how can we engage with what you are saying without actually signaling students? Because, or we don't think it's good practice. Maybe you have different ideas. I don't know.
I think all we've got to do is just open people's eyes, let them know these opportunities exist and how their skill set can be a good match to that opportunity. And we're not just thinking of grades, whether it's A levels or the degree they achieve. It's thinking of skill sets, character. Are they a good match for that kind of pathway? You know, lots of employers are looking so much deeper than grades. They want to know, do you fit our culture? We need to educate young people, and we're not pushing them down any particular pathways, but we need to start this journey as young as possible. So, you know, I'm going to make reference to some STEM initiatives, because there's so many STEM initiatives for underrepresented groups, especially for females. Now, these STEM initiatives have been going for a few years, and it will take years, if not decades, before we truly find the results and the impact. But these initiatives, such as STEMettes and the WISE campaign, they start at primary school. You know, they start as young as possible. So young people are seeing these opportunities and they're starting to learn, well, what do I need? And actually, what have I got that makes me good for that? These conversations are starting way before A-level choices, way before GCSE choices. because often, like we said, especially for economics, the majority of students have picked it for A-level. But what about those students that didn't realize that maybe it was essential, or maybe maths A-level was essential? We need just to open their eyes at a young age to all opportunities, not pushing them, but just, yeah, keeping the
and I think that's kind of, and I think that's what Tim is saying, and some other people are saying as well, because economics, like we know that our economics graduates, like 95% of them get a very good job after their degree. However, we are failing much more than STEM and other disciplines to attract these students. We know that medical doctors and economists are two of the professions that make the most money, at least in this country. And so how come we are not attracting them into economics? And just to pick up one thing that Parma said at some point, do you think we should actually, because we lack role models, the fact that there are few people from underrepresented backgrounds, it means that, you know, we don't have many role models in economics. So kind of looking at the banker is like, it's not the cool black guy, you know, but can we use footballers or someone that even didn't go to university, but perhaps, you know, can help us to encourage people to go and do economics specifically?
Totally. So yeah, I think that analogy of using role models that might not have even studied the course is key. So clever things that STEM initiatives do, they'll say, well, look how STEM is used in music. Look how STEM is used in fashion or design or the games industry, and actually bring it back to that young person's everyday life and show how STEM is used in that young person's life. We can do that with economics. You know, we need that young person to think, right, well, when I pick up my phone every day, how is economics used in the making of that phone? How is it used in the making of the apps? It might be football industry, like you mentioned. Yeah, David Beckham hasn't done an economics degree, but let's think about how economics is used in football, especially, again, at the moment in lockdown. Fascinating case study to look at how finance in football, you know, is being impacted by coronavirus, the different marketing and television rights. There are so many examples from a young person's everyday life that we need to show how economics is key to that and bring it to their world. They don't know about auditing, you know, and nor are they really interested in auditing. I'm not interested in auditing, for example, but, you know, there are fun things. There are lots of fun things and exciting things that can make a change to the world that young people live in, where economics is a key.
Okay, so wait, I have a lot of messages. If anyone I'm missing your questions, just kind of shout again. So Claude is saying no one is interested in auditing. Well, I do think we might be able to sell these jobs better, but there was actually, I think what Steve had a good question here, and it's going back to this predicted grade system. Mm-hmm. And you say, do you think that the predicted grade system that we have in the UK work against traditional WP students? And one of the things that have been, like we have been saying during this crisis, or some people have been saying during this crisis, is to the universities could shift the university year from January to December. So kind of we are gonna recruiting students now on base of the real grades rather than predicted grades. What do you think about it? Would that benefit?
Yeah, so in terms of the grades that young people are going to get, it's a lot of guesswork at the moment, really. In my opinion, I truly believe that underrepresented groups will be discriminated against. And this is a true shame. So that means that those young people might not achieve the grades they could have done, which means they might not be able to access university. And like I mentioned, they may not then consider clearing or other opportunities. Now, in terms of delaying the start to the university year, which is kind of inevitable, I imagine, I can understand that, because you don't want to start in September and start everything online. It's not the greatest footing to the start of a university career. My worry, though, about starting in January is the gap from them finishing school, which effectively was losing track here with the lockdown, but maybe 2 months ago now to January,
March, yeah.
it's huge, you know. So they potentially, and I say potentially because this doesn't work for all, they potentially have lost contact with school. They might be disengaged from education. They might have applied for uni, but what's happening in this gap? Have they got a role model that they can turn to that's still guiding them, advising them, preparing them for university life? You know, what if there's other pressures at home? What else is happening at home? That they might have family members that have been affected directly by coronavirus. They may come under extreme pressure from, you know, lack of income within their home. So yes, I understand January being maybe a better start because you can hopefully start face to face. But if we do that, again, it comes back to communication and making sure those young people are engaged. Don't wait till the first week of January because you might have lost the chunk. Start talking to them now.
Yeah, I don't think this is kind of, some people are saying that it's going to be better, but I think so far we are starting in September. I don't think there is many plans to actually go to January, but was kind of an idea whether if we started in January, would that be better for the students? But actually you bring a very good point. There would be a too big gap here for these students since like last time they engage in proper education. So, but just talking about the fact that they might be coming to university in September, but we might not be ready to have face-to-face teaching yet because, you know, under the current scenario, it's very unlikely. And I think we are start preparing to do some online teaching. And so how do you think, like, even for those students that we managed to attract to university, how do you think they're going to be impacted by moving online teaching, and what can we do in order to kind of keep these students engaged? We don't want them to drop because they don't have face-to-face contact, for instance.
I mean, online learning has been growing. We've just kind of been pushed into fast growth in the last few months because we have no other option. So it's going to happen whether we like it or not, but now we're kind of thrown in, maybe not having the guidance, knowledge, expertise of how to do it. I think for me, there's a couple of key areas. We need to be flexible with how we do this because it can't be one size fits all for all your students. We really need to consider that actually, do they have access at home? Yes, the majority will have some form of access, but what does that access look like? What does their learning environment look like? You know, I'm currently sat in what was our third bedroom, but now we've got a temporary desk and, you know, we've built this up. Young people might have that. They might be working from the dining room. They might be working from their bedroom with, you know, a sibling that they share that bedroom with. We need to consider all these factors and make sure that the online community and online learning tools cater for all types of young people and all types of learning environments. So it's not just, I post one video with one message, that's my job done, leave it. Let's have varieties where we, you know, communicate that message in a variety of forms and track. Don't post and leave it. Let's track engagement. Are young people actually engaged? Don't wait until that May assessment and then when you look at the results, go, oh my word, no one was listening to my videos. No one watched them. Look at these are shocking. You know, let's track the engagement. Let's monitor, are certain things working for my students? Get feedback. You know, let's ask them. We are trialing at the moment. Let's be open and honest and talk to our students and say, what is good? What is bad? Tell us. You know, it's a whole learning curve. But another thing that I would stress is let's make sure lecturers and teachers are protecting themselves. We've got to do this in a safe manner. You know, it's great that lots of people are jumping in and trying to engage young people, but let's be very careful with, you know, Zooms and videos, that we're not breaking any safeguarding policies here and we're looking after ourselves, because I've seen a few bits of bad practice recently, but with really good intentions. So it's important to remember that safeguarding.
Okay, so again, we have few comments and questions around here, but one question, and actually I have heard this quite a lot from people more engaged in widening participation. You say, so we have to contact schools, but actually schools have a very strict timetable at the moment, and they are being contacted by many. And so how do we get schools to actually make space for events about economics? And or what other alternatives we might have, because of course now teachers have a lot to do, and sometimes the things that do not form part of their syllabus, their curriculum, what can we do?
So yeah, so some of you may or may not be aware, but schools in the UK now are tested effectively on their careers guidance. So every school has to have a careers program. So they are tested on this, and it does form part of an Ofsted inspection. Now, this means, and schools should be doing this anyhow, but this means that actually universities and their outreach programs can really help a school, show that they are meeting their benchmarks that they have to for their careers guidance. So actually, not only can they help the young people in front of them, they can help those staff members meet key benchmarks that they need to evidence for Ofsted. So it's a win-win. Timetables, yes, it can be a total nightmare, but schools now are slowly realizing that actually they do have to open their doors. There's so much good practice from schools up here in the Northeast. Studio schools, which sadly that model necessarily didn't work, UTCs, they're open to project-based learning. They're open to lots of hands-on activities where actually they want real life examples, real life projects to work on. These could be from industry, but they could totally be from the university sector as well, where you can set projects to young people that really bring the curriculum to life. I know one of the schools we work with is actually on this webinar right now. Emmanuel College, they've got a great colleague, Gavin Clark, who he's always, follow him on Twitter if you can. He's got so much good practice where it's an alumni coming into the school. They're going out on trips all the time. It's not just that teacher at the front of the room. It's actually that teacher with a co-deliverer from industry, from university. And that really can bring the subject to life rather than the young person, thinking, well, why am I learning this in economics sat here in Gateshead? And the teacher saying, well, it's on the exam in summer. That doesn't motivate me. Getting a piece of paper doesn't motivate me. But hearing someone from industry saying, this is how I used my economics degree. And now, I'm working in the music industry. And actually, I used to come to your school. This is how I did it. Then suddenly you think, brilliant, I'm going to listen to Sir, because now it's more than just a grade. It's actually a stepping stone to be like that guy.
So I'm jumping around because I keep reading like all the comments that people say, etc. But do you think that, okay, we are doing like, at least from the university perspective, we feel we are doing a lot, and sometimes we feel like we are not achieving too much. Do you think there is anything that you can point out to say, okay, this is wrong what you are doing, or it's just we just need to keep trying?
I don't think what universities are trying to do is wrong. I think actually there's lots of unbelievable schemes there. For me, it's really leveling the playing field and making sure all young people have access to these schemes. So like I said at the start, we can't be in every school and see every young person. Let's continue these schemes and try and embed them within curriculums if possible. But let's use technology again, like we are doing for online lectures, for example. Let's use technology and show how we can share these messages so young people can, during lockdown, still engage with that opportunity, engage with someone within the school's outreach team and the widening participation team. And for me, a key needs to be that those staff members that are doing the outreach are relatable to the young people. They might be unbelievable staff members with the greatest passion, the greatest will, But even if they start talking to a young person and they have a different accent, potentially the barrier's up. You know, you're not from my neighborhood. I'm not going to listen to you. We need to make sure that there's careful matching. So when these schemes are delivered, whether in person or online, that they feel that actually that is a role model I can associate with. So let's be really careful with the staff that deliver the message.
Okay, so I think that, and it becomes like always a bit tricky because we have a lot of people very keen in doing these things, but sometimes it's like, you know, we have to tell people, perhaps you are not the best person to engage with this specific cohort, which, you know, is not great. So Laura is saying, one thing we have done at UEA is to include a teacher CPD session as part of on an economic taster day, which was really well received by the teachers and highlighted a lot of biases that schools teachers might have. But I am gonna go back a bit to grades here, because we still, like, especially top universities, like I think kids, if they want to go to LSE, UCL, even Warwick, we still are asking, even for kids from for widening participation, coming through widening participation programs, grades that are A, B, or AAA. You know, for Warwick, the typical offer is A star, so, which is very high, right? So we are asking a bit lower, but it's still quite high. Do you think we should be looking at something different? And if we should be looking at something different, these kids, what should we be looking at?
Yeah, so I think, you know, the COVID climate that we're in now, yes, it's worrying, it can create anxiety. It can also be an opportunity for change and evolution. You know, it saddened me when I used to work at my sixth form that actually the young people were basically, you know, summarized in a list of letters and numbers. Even if they were good grades, you thought there's so much more than just grades. You know, I think universities need to be thinking deeper than grades and think, well, how do we make this young person, how do we know they're a good match for our course? This is looking, again, like employers do, with skill set, character, culture. Are they a good match for this course? Now, you can't see that from a list of 3 grades. You know, with the best will, with a personal statement, again, you can't see that. We need to think about how young people can really evidence their skills. So at Global Bridge, what we do, young people have a profile. It's like a digital record of achievement, really, or think of it like LinkedIn, but a junior version. They have profiles where they can add, you know, a journal that they've written, a piece of work that they're proud of. They can add photos, videos of sports, music, hobbies. You know, we want to see these young people as real people and more than just grades. But we've got to be conscious that maybe universities can't sit down and actually, you know, interview every student, meet them face to face. So how can we do this and make sure we can transfer a real insight into that young person in a quick and easy manner? Again, it comes to technology for me, and young people use technology. They're using social media all the time. How can we use that kind of momentum with a more professional setting? So then a university can maybe at the click of a button see a profile of a year 13 student and actually get within seconds a real insight into who they are and are they a good fit for our course and our university.
So, and related to this, Claudia asked, what would you ask for on a personal statement for them to show that they have potential?
Yeah, so putting things into words, whether verbally or written, is hard. It's hard for adults. It's hard for a young person. And immediately, if we're thinking of underrepresented groups, again, they're hindered, you know, because they might not have someone at home that's done this already and can coach them. They might not have that person at school potentially that can coach them through the journey. So putting it into words is now impossible to really get that across. This is where I believe we need to use media. And it could be, here is an example of a piece of work that I've done. Here is a video of me doing a Duke of Edinburgh scheme. Here is a photo of me volunteering in the community. And actually, click, 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 within a few seconds, pictures and videos tell us so much more and in a much quicker fashion than a lengthy piece of writing that maybe you don't have time to read.
Okay, that's actually very interesting advice to kind of get students to do more things that just show their grades and their personal statements. I don't think, like, apart from Oxford and Cambridge, which do interviews, I don't think we do much more than that at the minute. So that kind of, we might want to take that into account. I know there is a lot of going on in the chat, but I think there's a lot of just comments and answers to each other. So we still have some minutes. I wonder whether anyone wants to kind of ask a live question, or I still have a few questions to ask, but you know, I've been talking quite a bit. So if anyone wants to ask a live question to something particularly pressing.
Hi Sam, it's Clodagh here. I just have a concern about the use of role models, in the sense of the history of economics is we just have hardly any role models, particularly in Russell Group, both amongst the alumni and the staff. So if you say don't put the staff with the wrong voices on the videos and stuff, we'll have silent movies, I think. So I'm just wondering if there could be like a pool of Royal Economic Society people who, you know, maybe as a collective, there may be more scope to find the right type of people. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. You've got to be really careful with it. And if we kind of go back to the STEM analogy, there's a great movement in STEM called STEM ambassadors, where someone that works or studies within a STEM field can basically apply to be an ambassador. They get some little online training, I think. They even get a shiny little pin badge. But then, yes, there is a collective pool that's across the UK that can be the face for videos, that can maybe volunteer and visit into schools. But yeah, I think maybe some kind of scheme where it's actually, there's collaboration. It's not one university doing it one way and another doing it the other. We actually work together and maybe have some kind of ambassador scheme where you can pull those role models, so we don't have silent videos, like you say. So no, I totally agree.
Okay,
So I have a question for Sam, if it's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
So Sam, going back to this idea about the personal statements, one of the problems I have with personal statements is that I find they tend to be a little bit dishonest. They tend students writing what they think universities want to hear, as opposed to actually giving you a kind of a good idea about what the student's really about. And I was wondering if you can think about, or you have any ideas about how we can get slightly more honest kind of ideas about students from a personal statement, you know, working within the system that we have at the moment.
Yeah, so it is a tricky one, because again, it comes back to that kind of being coached through the process and putting down what you think the person wants to see. So I think young people, we really want to get across. It might be key areas, for example, you know, it might be skill set, character and culture. We need to be quite specific with what we're asking them, because they do need guidance. Again, this is where I think if we start this journey at a younger age and young people are effectively collecting evidence of who they are as an actual person rather than just grades, maybe from the year of age of 11, that actually it doesn't become as much of an ask for a 16, 17-year-old to put it on a personal statement, because they've actually been preparing this since the start of secondary school. You know, they've actually got a record of all the stuff that they've been doing. And then really, it's a matter of picking the relevant things that they've done for the last 5, 6, 7 years and submitting that to the university. So it's not, I'm going to sit down now after 7 years of secondary school education and putting it all into words. It's actually, I've got this kind of online record of everything that I've done, you know, and this has been my honest journey. And we can have, you know, maybe school input that effectively signs that off, really, and says, actually, yeah, this is a good reflection of Sam and his journey at our school, rather than trying to, at the last minute almost of their secondary education, compile it into words. Again, I think media, pictures, videos, paints a truer reflection of young people, and that's the world that they live in.
Because of course we are talking about young people making decisions, but we also know that young people don't make decisions on their own. And for some of them, like having parents that never went to university, it means that their parents perhaps might be against going to university for their kids, or might not be very supportive. Do you think we have to kind of connect with parents, or anything that we can do also to kind of engage parents into this process?
I think, Steffi, like one of your colleagues mentioned, the good practice for engaging teachers, you know, let's engage anyone that is guiding these young people. Engage the teachers so they're upskilled, so they feel empowered to tell that message to the young people. But definitely let's engage the parents. You know, parents feel a bit hopeless if they're not up to date and they don't know what to tell. They don't really want to turn to their son and daughter and say, well, just go on the internet, you'll find the answer there. You know, they want to have the answer. So again, we can't necessarily round all parents up and get them to Warwick University. Let's give them the information. So we might have online tools for young people, online tools for parents, online tools for teachers. We can't have the same message for all. We've got to have a different vehicle for all those audiences. But yeah, the more information and the more upskilling we can do for those people that guide the young people, definitely. And I think parents would really appreciate that. You know, who knows? Those parents might want to become a mature student. Why not?
And in fact, actually, that's a very good point, Claudia. There is actually a move at the moment to more economics apprenticeships degrees, like the Bank of England and the Government Economic Service have started. Do you think like kids and parents will be more attracted to them?
Yeah, so I'm a huge ambassador for the apprenticeship schemes. I think, you know, they're a great way for young people to break out into industry. Now, we've really got to remember the underrepresented groups and what the pressures might be at home as well, and what their conceptions might be of student debt, or the misconceptions of student debt. So from picking up what they might see in the press and hearing what maybe Martin Lewis has said, and loads of people are scared about the debt they're going to get at university, and then thinking, well, actually, this employer is going to pay me maybe £16,000 a year and pay for my degree. Well, actually, from a savvy point of view, why would I not do that? Because actually it's win-win. I'm getting a degree, I'm working, and I'm getting paid. And when I finish that degree, I get a promotion, hopefully, fingers crossed. So I think universities have to be very, very conscious of these. Not see it as an enemy, because actually you can work together and work on these to make sure it is truly inclusive. But I think especially for underrepresented groups, a degree apprenticeship is very, very appealing. So again, that brings me back to my point that when they're at university, they've already secured the place with you. We've got to make sure it's not just 3 years of theory, webinars, lectures. Let's link it into the world of work. Let's link it into these exciting employers that desperately want economic graduates, so they feel that when they finish their degree, they are work ready, and they haven't just got a degree and they're utterly clueless about the world of work. You've actually trained them to be work ready as well.
Okay, we have a comment from Andrew Simpson from YouTube, and it says, I used to be a business ambassador to coach males in schools in Northeast England to help increase GCSE STEM grades who underperformed. It was a positive project with me being from an underrepresented postcode. Thank you very much, Andrew, for that. Okay, well, yeah, I guess we have just a reminder, we are getting towards the end of our session in any case. If you have any pressing question for Sam, Otherwise, just let me remind you all that next week we have another seminar with Claudia talking about employability, of course. And this is going to be kind of linked very well, I think, what we have been saying here today, talk quite a lot about employability. And yeah, so again, Sam, you let us with a lot of food for thought for the future and kind of consideration that we hopefully are going to take back to our universities and, you know, think about it. And so I think some, sorry.
Steffi,
yep.
Can I do a quick plug for our conference, the Teach Econ conference on 17th and 18th of June. And on the 18th, we have a whole session on diversity and inclusivity, which covers some of these things. There's just way too much to talk about, obviously, but there's another opportunity then.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Parma. Of course, we forgot about that, but I am joining that conference, of course. And one more thing, Sam is going to be on Twitter. He said he can be on Twitter for kind of 30 minutes after the seminar. So if anyone has more questions or want to ask any specific things to Sam, I'm going to post it on the CTALE post or tweet of today. And, you know, just so Econ chat, and I think that's it. Thank you very much, Sam. So apparently this is a new way to clap on Zoom or online. So thank you. That's been great.
Thank you very much, guys. Yeah. No, good to chat to you all. Take care, everyone.
Cheers, Sam.